What is going on, Washington fans, and welcome to Bleacher Report. I'm Josh Taylor, and on this stream, I'll be talking about my biggest sleepers of the NFL draft. When it comes to the Washington Commanders, really specifically of what they're looking for, maybe some top 30 visits they have coming in, but some players that you need to start recognizing before the draft because we're days away. We're just over a week finally of realizing who the pick is at number 2. We don't have to debate the quarterbacks anymore. But what happens after we get our quarterback at number 2? What about the rest of the picks? Who are some sleepers that could come in and make an immediate impact? And this is honestly one I'm super excited about because I have a lot of players that I love that I've been following through this process. Some of them have started to get some recognition. So that I can't really call them sleepers anymore. So I had to add a couple other draft crushes to my board that I liked. But overall, there's some sleepers that I'm super passionate about in this draft because I think the talent is super deep. So you can't, hype up everybody. Not everyone's going to get seen throughout the whole process, and that's okay. There's some guys that fall through the cracks, and you find some really good talent and some sleepers throughout the draft. That's what we brought Adam Peters here for. And especially with Adam Peters, he's been really good. People have said over the last few years, he's really been in control of these later rounds, like rounds 4 through 7 for the 49ers of, finding that late talent. And he did a great job, not only like a George Kittle, but also someone like a Dre Greenlaw in the 5th round. Both of those guys in the 5th round were complete game changers for the 49ers. And I think Adam Peters is going to, put that hard hat on when it comes to day 3 of the draft. And some fans are going to back out and be like, okay, well, we're kind of expecting, we got a quarterback. We're kind of done here. No, there's a lot of guys that can be in these later rounds, and some even on like the rounds 2 and 3 that I think are sleepers as well. But I'm excited because I really trust Adam Peters' process. I love how he drafts. So I'm excited to break this down for y'all and show y'all some of my sleepers of the draft. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the window because I'm going to go through here and just show y'all, like I said, just like their overall profile over on PF kind of breakdown of everything. This is what I've been using throughout the whole offseason, by the way. But let's take a look. I'm going to go through like the main positions for Washington. Obviously, I think we can all agree that wide receiver is a need here in Washington. Trying to find that guy that could be a dominant wide receiver too. I think Jahan Dotson's a guy that could go in the slot. I think Jahan Dotson can also stay on the outside and play on the outside, and that's fine. But I'm starting to come down here, and this is a guy I'm going to talk about him. But Schrager did a mock draft and actually put this guy at pick 32. And if you follow me on X, you saw that I said, Jalen Polk, Hive, stand up. Our time is here. And with Jalen Polk, I think this is a guy that is super slept on. What's going on? C West 316. Just saw the notification. Didn't know it was Josh, my boy. What's going on? Appreciate you stopping by here. But with Jalen Polk, I'm super excited to see what this guy can do. I think he is a high-end wide receiver, too. Now, if you look at Jalen Polk, obviously he's in a loaded wide receiver room with Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan over there at Washington. But, I mean, just first off, watch the tape. I thoroughly enjoy watching Jalen Polk's tape because, one, he's a great catcher. He has fantastic hands, great contested catch rate. He has a great release package. He's like this bigger body, physical guy. I want him to be a little bit better after the catch, but I'm just going to nitpick there. But he is such a willing, but also dominant blocker. I love, and I know that's super underrated. Speaking of underrated, traits when it comes to wide receivers is being able to block in the perimeter. Jalen Polk has been one of the best. He is super willing, whether it's a linebacker, whether it's a corner, a safety, it doesn't matter. Jalen Polk has big-time blocking traits. So I was not surprised when I saw him at number 32 for Schrager when it came to his mock draft going to the Chiefs. The Chiefs fans would absolutely love Jalen Polk. But I think Jalen Polk is a sleeper in the 2nd round for Washington. People talk about Keon Coleman. People talk about Xavier Worthy. Give me Jalen Polk over both of the guys. And I know that's a hot take. Keon Coleman has these freak athletic abilities. Xavier Worthy super fast. In my opinion, Jalen Polk is on his way to being one of the well-crafted wide receivers. He just does everything so well. And like I said, in a loaded wide receiver room, where there's only a couple mouths that can, eat at the same time, Jalen Polk said, hey, I don't care. I'm going to get me a 1,159 yards, and I'm going to get you 9 touchdowns. Michael Penix Jr., by the way. I know we got elite Rome Odunze. We got Jalen McMillan, who had a couple injuries, but still really good wide receiver. But I want y'all to know that I'm still him. And I think Jalen Polk is a guy that's getting slept on way too much. And he's still super young, 6'2", 204, coming out at 22 years old. That's what I'm looking for. You want these wide receivers that are coming out young, like Jamar Chase when he came out. He was like 20. He was super young, 20, maybe. Like he was like right in the middle of 20. And there's some wide receivers that are coming out. You want to talk about Xavier Legette? I love Xavier Legette. This is a guy who's been in college for a long time and kind of broke out his last year. I think he's like 24 years old, kind of like Terry. And Terry's been that outlier guy. Shout out to Terry McLaurin, because when he came out, he was like 24 years old. So that hurt his draft stock a lot. But Terry, came into the league, played with all these quarterbacks, didn't care, produces, catches everything. Those are those guys in the draft. Like Terry was absolutely a sleeper in the draft, and we got him in the 3rd round. I want to find some of those guys that can come in and dominate. Are they going to be as good as Terry? That's hard. That's hard to do. But I'm looking for high-end wide receivers. And I've talked about how much I like Troy Franklin. I don't really think Troy Franklin's a sleeper. I think he's slightly disrespected just because people, kind of discount his physical aspect of his game, kind of call him, just like a separator, and that's fine. But it really just depends on what kind of wide receiver you want. There's so many different wide receivers in this class. It's just like, what exactly do you want out of your wide receiver? According to your scheme, according to your play calling, what you want. Do you want a guy who can eat up the zones, find those dead spots? Do you want a guy that can play, man-to-man and get that release at the line and stack DBs and get back on his stem and get that separation that way? What do you want? Or do you want a physical guy that's a contested catch guy? In the perfect world, you want a guy that can do a little bit of everything. And I think Jalen Polk is well on his way to being that guy that can do a little bit of everything. Of course, like I said, he's not the perfect prospect. He's not like a Marvin Harrison Jr. or anything by any means. Like I said, I want him to be a little bit better after the catch. But when it comes to, eye contact, when it comes to, his hands, his reliability, Jalen Polk, in my opinion, is one of the best that I watched this season. I loved Jalen Polk. I've been clamoring for him since like October, November. I was like, yo, don't sleep on this guy. He's a beast. Now, who's another wide receiver, Josh? Who's someone maybe a little bit later on? I think Washington could even double dip at wide receiver, whether they get one in the 2nd, 3rd round, maybe get one in like the 5th, 6th, or 7th, especially like a return game. I know we have a couple guys that compete. We got Crowder coming back. Maybe we got a couple return guys. I think Malik Washington technically isn't really a sleeper anymore. This guy was in like the 200s and now he's at 90. So I can't really call him a sleeper anymore. But when it comes to, breaking tackles, yards after the catch, like Malik Washington is the best. Him and Malachi Corley, in my opinion, are the best that do that. Pat_Airless says, do you think we get Ayuk? And if so, do we, didn't mean that. Do we still draft a guy? So I don't think we get Brandon Ayuk. I don't see that being an option as much as I would love for it. And I've talked about it a couple times on here. Obviously the Adam Peters connection, that's big. That does help if they want to get him. But I don't think that stops them from getting a guy. Maybe if they, a guy in like the 2nd, 3rd round, possibly, yes. But like I said, I think outside of like Terry, Jahan behind them, even if we draft someone, who's wide receiver 4? De'Ami Brown. I think my guy Mitch Tinsley has some good traits to him that I think he could, once given an opportunity, could do some things. But we just need some more talent. And so I think even if you did get Brandon Ayuk, you still draft a guy in these later rounds for some depth. Because Cliff Kingsbury does a lot of 4 wide receiver sets, even 5 wide receiver sets. You'll also see a lot of 2 tight end spots. So I'm not ruling it out. I don't think it's likely that they go Brandon Ayuk. But if they do, I would still take a wide receiver in the later rounds. And that's what I'll kind of show you here is who could be one of these later round guys. And I honestly like Luke McCaffrey a lot. And it's not because of his last name. Honestly, I didn't know anything about Luke McCaffrey until I went to the Senior Bowl. And I was like, all right, they're going to hype him up because he is a McCaffrey. He has the name. Here we go. And I'm watching him in practice, and I'm like, yo, Luke McCaffrey, he can ball. He made some crazy catches at the Senior Bowl. He also impressed me with how well he separated, but then also how his ability to go up and get passes. I remember they were doing drills. It was like 7-on-7, and they were in the red zone. And I think Michael Penix Jr. kind of threw it up to him in the back of the end zone, and he just went up high, pointed it over the safety. I don't remember who it was, but I just remember him catching it like crazy. It was a crazy catch. Everyone was like, holy smokes. And people tweeted out the video and stuff, so I'm sure you can find it. But Luke McCaffrey got some game to him. I know you're like, Rice, whatever. We don't know what to get out of him. I don't care. If you can get Luke McCaffrey in like the 4th, 5th round, absolutely do that. Like I said, if you're a stats person, that's all you care about. He had 71 catches on 120 targets, 992 yards, and he had 13 touchdowns for Rice last year. Only had 3 drops, so he is super reliable when it comes to his hands. Contested catches, tied for 2nd in the league. Like I told y'all, he can go up and get it. He had 17. So even like with not the best quarterback play, let's just like throw it up to Luke. He gonna go get it. He can play. He played a lot in the slot at Rice, actually, which is surprising because he's like what 6'2", 6'2", 195, 23 years old, whatever. I'll take it. Like I said, a bigger body guy, but he can play inside or outside, which is great because, like I said, with these loaded wide receiver sets where it's going to be 4 or 5 guys, you want a guy that can play inside, outside, kind of like Jahan. He's kind of the opposite, though. He's kind of smaller, but he can still play on the outside and inside. So let's see. J-Lo Frisco says when Cliff goes to 4-5 wide, Eckler will for sure be lined up as one of those wide receivers. I could see it. I talked to Austin the other day, and he told me like he loves the offense so far. He thinks we have a great identity. Obviously, we're going to add some key guys, but getting Zach Ertz, he's a huge Terry fan. So I know he's definitely on board with everything for the offense. And Troy Franklin, in my opinion, I think he's a late 1st rounder. Honestly, he might be like my wide receiver 5. I'm a big Troy Franklin fan, bigger than a lot of people are. But okay, outside of wide receiver, what's next? Let's look at offensive line. And this is one I'm super passionate about because there is one guy that I've been a big fan of for a while. And then there's another guy that I kind of jumped on board at the Senior Bowl. So Roger Rosengart was one of those guys that popped out at the Senior Bowl, had a great week there. But I can't call him a sleeper anymore. Once again, this is a guy that was in like the 250 range when it came to rank. Then he shot up at the Senior Bowl. Then he shot up again recently when Mel Kiper has him at pick 31 to the 49ers. I'm like, whoa, that's a little high for me. But honestly, in the 2nd round, he could definitely be an option there. Would not surprise me at all. But I'm sticking with my sleepers, and these guys are kind of close to each other. Christian Jones, right tackle out of Texas. Like I said, this is a guy that really had a great week at the Senior Bowl. Super high run blocking grade, zone grade, true pass set, pass blocking grade. I think this guy fits as I don't want to say raw because he's like, 23 and a half. He's not young, but I think he still has some untapped potential, but he has a lot of traits that you like. He was going up against the best at the Senior Bowl, whether it was Latu, whether it was Adisa Isaac, Chris Braswell, Robinson out of Missouri, a guy who could go 1st round as well. Like, I'm saying the best of the best, and Christian Jones continued to be one of those guys that impressed the heck out of me. Now, honestly, when I was watching Texas tape, I wasn't really focused on their offensive line. I was looking at the wide receivers. I was looking at JT Sanders. I was looking at their D-line. But then also going up against that D-line every day in practice, it makes you better, whether it's Sweat, whether it's Murphy. They got some depth guys that are going to be studs this year coming up. Only allowed 1 sack last year, 2 hits, and 8 hurries at Texas. Had 511 pass blocking snaps and lined up primarily as right tackle. Played left tackle in 2021, but switched over to right tackle in 2022. I think this is a guy that they could. I haven't heard any like connections or links to Washington with Christian Jones, but I think this is a guy, if he's there in the 4th round, you kick the tires because he has some really good traits to him. Now, another guy, I think they'll likely go offensive tackle. I think 60% chance they trade back up into the first with pick 36 or 40 and, double dip on night one, get a quarterback at 2, and then get an offensive tackle. And I'm aiming for pick 13 to 16 range. I'm really honed in on the Raiders right now as that pick to trade up. I'm pretty sold on that one. I'll have my final mock draft on Bleacher Report next Tuesday to kind of talk through everything. But I think they do go offensive tackle. Like I said, middle first round. If not, it's going to be like early second, whether it's a guy like Jordan Morgan, Kingsley, Patrick Paul, someone like that. But if not, I think that they could very well so be like a late third, maybe mid third round guy. I like Javon Foster. I'm a big Javon Foster fan. I watched that Ohio State game to end the season, and he had a phenomenal game. And once again, I was like, this is a guy I'm going to be watching at the Senior Bowl. Showed out and was lights out. Like every single rep, I was honed in on the offensive tackles at the Senior Bowl. Those pretty much who I watched all week long. Only allowed 1 sack last year, no hits, and 12 hurries out of 449 pass blocking reps, and pretty much dominated in every aspect when it comes to grades. Run blocking grade at 85.8, a zone grade at 91, and a true pass set blocking at 71.7, pass block at 80.9. So big time player. I was talking to him at the Senior Bowl. I was talking to Robinson. They just said that was good going up against each other again. How much they really made each other better. But I think the offensive tackles, in my opinion, had the biggest week at the Senior Bowl because everyone's talking about the defensive line and the edge rushers that were there, high profile guys. But these offensive tackles said, okay, that's fine. Then they had some big reps against these guys. So those are my 2 late round sleepers. I know we don't have a 4th round, but I think Javon Foster would be a good 4th rounder if we did. Same with Christian Jones, but I would have no problem getting them in the 3rd. Caden Wallace is a guy that's been brought up. He's connected to Washington as well. A lot of experience out of Penn State. Some of y'all know I covered Penn State for 2 years. Last year and the year before that. And I was a big Caden Wallace fan as well. A lot of people obviously looking at Olu on the left side. What about Caden Wallace on the right side? And when it's looking at those left and right tackles for Washington, I think, the higher ones, obviously the left tackles, unless you're like JC Latham or Mims, then your right tackles. But the higher prospects in the draft are obviously left tackles. And then in these middle rounds, 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds is where you start seeing some of these right tackles that have some upside to them. Blake Fisher in the 3rd would be great. Like I said, Roger Rosengarten is probably a 2nd rounder now. So if you want to get him, you got to get him in the 2nd round. But my biggest sleepers, Christian Jones, Javon Foster, I'm going to die on that hill. Guys that I don't think are getting talked about enough. All right, so let's look at corner next. Corners are fun. Corners are exciting. There's one guy, I'm not going to act like I knew anything about him before the process until recently. But I saw that he had a top 30 visit lined up with Washington, and that is Elijah Jones out of Boston College. And this is a Dan Quinn corner if I've ever seen one. Elijah Jones, first off, is the best man coverage corner in the draft. He had the highest man coverage grade out of every corner in the draft, 90.8, which is exactly what Dan Quinn is going to be drilling over. He had 5 interceptions last year. Just a lengthy, really great physical corner. And I was like, let me look at his numbers from, the combine, pro days and stuff like that. So he's 6'1", I'll take it. He weighed in at 185, a little bit smaller. That's fine. 40-yard dash, ran a 4.45. He had a 2.58 20-yard split, which is great. Those are elite numbers. He had a 4.25 vertical and a 10.11 broad, which is great. Those are all fantastic numbers. He had an overall relative athletic score of a 9.63. The only thing that really brought him down was his weight. If he was like 195 or 200, he would have been almost like a 10. He would have been the perfect athletic corner when it comes to, and shout out to Math Bomb, by the way, for those RAS scores. I think he's a big time sleeper, but I think this is probably one of Dan Quinn's favorite prospects in the whole draft. I think when he watches the Elijah Jones tape, he's like, I can work with this guy. Me and Coach Witt can put Elijah Jones out there day one, and we feel like we could have him ready and put him in ability in a spot where he can succeed. Like I said, they're going to be playing a lot of man. I don't want to say it's like primarily man, because I think they're going to do a lot of things. They're going to rotate a lot of things. And we're still trying to figure out what the blueprint of the defense is, by the way. Like, what's Quan Martin's role? What's Jeremy Chen's role? Is like, do we have all of our safeties? Like, Derek Forrest? Are they expecting St. Juice to start on the outside? And if so, Elijah Jones can start in the slot, and he can be a really good slot corner. He can be a really good outside corner. Like I said, he's 185, so it kind of works against him, but also kind of helps him because he is still a taller, lengthier guy to where he can play that outside. The only thing in his game that really popped on tape to me was like his physical, and I get it. Like I said, he's 185, the whole tackling aspect. Can he take down an A.J. Brown? Can he take down a DK Metcalf? Not a lot of people can. So if he can beef up just a little bit, people are like, oh my God, here's Forbes again. No, Forbes was way smaller than Elijah Jones, like way smaller when it came to like mass and body size. But get him beefed up a little bit. But Dan Quinn can mold this guy into a really good starting corner. Like I said, I watched him late. Once I saw we had a top 30 with him, I was like, all right, let me look this guy up. And I watched the tape. I'm like, holy smokes. Like, when it comes to man-to-man coverage, his tape was pretty much one of my like favorites this whole process. I'm a huge Cam Hart fan too. People know I love Cam Hart. I think he's a sleeper as well in that third round range. I think Elijah Jones in the third would be a home run. If he's there in the third, Dan Quinn's going to be sweating. He's like, please let this guy fall to us. But still, 185 is not bad. Like, what was Forbes? Like 165, 170? That's way different. That's a whole nother UFC weight class. Like, that's a lot different. So JLo_Frisco, don't worry. It's not Forbes 2.0, I promise. 185, I think he's probably going to be closer to 190 when he gets, season ready. I think 190 is very reachable, and that's great. 6'2", 190, whatever, or 6'1", 190, that's fine. But a physical outside corner, I'm taking that all day long. And I honestly think Dan Quinn would love this guy. Another guy people are kind of sleeping on, like I said, corner-wise, besides my guy, Cam Hart. I'm going to shout out Cam Hart any chance I get. Kamal Hayden is one, but Kalen King is the definition of a sleeper. And the numbers don't look the best, but like I said, guys, watching Penn State, covering Penn State, I don't get the fall off of Kalen King. This guy was a first rounder before the season started, and people saying like, oh, he had a bad season. Like, did he? I don't think so. I don't think he had a bad season. He didn't allow a single touchdown last year. He only allowed 290 yards. I think this is a guy that can play zone. He can play man. I'm not buying these numbers because the tape still showed me that Kalen King is a dude. I don't think he just magically fell off last year. I think obviously the Penn State secondary, you lose Joey Porter Jr. You have a couple different, moving pieces here and there. They're playing some young guys last year. But I'm not buying the fall off of, Kalen King's just bad all of a sudden. And I got to give my guy Serge a shout out because Serge is a good dude. If y'all know Serge, he, takes pictures and stuff like that. Fire pictures of the team. He loves Josh Newton, so I'm going to give him a shout out. Josh Newton is a big-time sleeper as well, TCU. The third and fourth round of corners, and I said this like last month, I was like, people aren't talking enough about this corner class. I keep hearing how it's like one of the best wide receiver classes ever, and I get it. I agree. But this corner class has some mid-round guys that could be just great day one players. Max Melton is starting to get the recognition that he deserves as well. Like I said, Cam Hart. Cho Smith-Wade is another guy. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. is a guy who could raise up. Kalen Carson, Renardo Green, Kyrie Jackson. I love Kyrie Jackson. Bring him back to the DMV. Third round, easy. Physical, 6'2", probably 205, just looking at him, maybe 200. Washington's going to get a corner in this draft in like the third round, and he's going to start day one, and people are going to be like, daggone it, Dan Quinn did it again. What was Jerron Bland, like a fifth round pick? out of Fresno State. Is it like maybe late 4th or like early 5th? I can't remember. But Trayvon Diggs goes down, and Deron Bland turns into a record-breaking pick-6 machine. Because Dan Quinn and Coach Witt said, we're going to play these players and put them in a position to succeed. And I have no doubt they would do this. This class has a lot of corners that fit what they want to do. And it showed, once again, top 30 visits with, like I said, Cam Hart, top 30 visit with Elijah Jones. And then I talked to Western Carolina's Rod Gaddison. I talked to him last night. He said he's visiting Washington today. That's another guy, 6 foot 195, physical man corner. So just like me, Dan Quinn's got a type. We all got a type. And when it comes to Dan Quinn, he has a type at corner. He wants a certain size and he wants a certain skill set. And it seems like I'm seeing this pattern. Now, maybe Kalen King doesn't fit that exactly, but I think he could. But I think Kyrie Jackson, Cam Hart, I'll even throw Melton in there, Elijah Jones, Rod Gaddison, sleeper pick. Dan Quinn has a type, and we're going to see that on draft night. Let's see what else. I had people talking about edge rushers. Let me go to the edge. Who's some edge sleepers? People know I love Adisa Isaac, love Chop Robinson. He's in Washington today. Confirmed that yesterday. Let's go down to, all right, Javonte Jean-Baptiste out of Notre Dame is a guy that had a top 30 with Washington. I think he's already done it. But this is a bigger guy too. I think he's a sleeper in my opinion. He was like completely off the radar when it came to the draft, especially when it came to like PFF, wasn't ranked, nothing. But now he's cracking, the top 200. He's at like, 160 something. He had 6 sacks last year, 10 hits, 22 hurries, and 2 batted passes. He's like, 6'4"? Yeah, 6'4", 260. What I've seen out of him is that, strong physical outside guy. I think he also fits that mold of what they're looking for with, Dorrance Armstrong, Clelin Ferrell. Dante Fowler's more of like this twitchier, great hand usage guy that I think is going to get some, a good amount of playing time. I think when it comes to the edge room, I think they love what they have. I feel like they aren't obligated to take an edge in the 2nd, 3rd round. It just depends who falls. Like I said, if Chop Robinson's there at 36, you get him. If Adisa Isaac's there at 36, you're probably getting him too. I think Robinson, Darius Robinson really fits what Dan Quinn wants to do too, how he can move inside, he can move outside, he can play, honestly anywhere from 0 to 9 tech. This guy can line up anywhere. That's one thing he told me at the Senior Bowl. Like, bro, I played everywhere on the line of Missouri. Literally put me anywhere. You can put me over the center and I'll get to the quarterback. So I think those 3 guys fit what they want to do on the defensive line. But if someone crazy, wide receiver, offensive tackle is there, they're not going to feel pressed like, oh, we have to go edge here. I think they really like what they built so far in free agency with Armstrong, with Ferrell, with Fowler, and then already having KJ Henry, with having Andre Jones. If they decided to just add one in the later rounds, and 2 of my guys are kind of here. Gabe Murphy, I'm a big Gabe Murphy fan as well. Now, this guy is kind of, I don't want to call him a tweener between like an outside linebacker and an edge rusher, but I guess I will. Because he's kind of like the undersized, not like that strong physical outside pass rusher, more of the twitchier speed guy, which makes sense when you watch Latu. So between Latu, the 2 Murphy twins at UCLA, this was the most productive and most disruptive pass rushing unit in all of college football last year by a large margin. It was not even close. And I think Gabe Murphy is a guy who's probably going to be there late 4th, early 5th. Like I said, Washington doesn't have a 4th, so hopefully he could come to the 5th round. But just like an overall draft board, I could see him being an early 4th rounder, honestly. Pass rush win rate, 18.4%. Run stop rate, super high, 8.4% as well. And that's the key one. So for a guy that's undersized, for a guy that doesn't have that strength aspect, can he set the edge? Can he stop the run on the way to the quarterback? And the answer is yes. And can he do that in the NFL? We'll find out. But when it comes to just true pass rushing, pass rush set grades, 87.3. So 3rd and long, when it's just like, hey, strictly it's going to be a pass play kind of ordeal, like I said, 8 sacks, 13 hits, 40 hurries last year. That's a lot. That's a big number. And like I said, his twin brother Grayson was back there with him, and then he had Latu, being his dominant self. In my opinion, I think he's the best, pass rusher in the NFL draft. But do not sleep on Gabe Murphy. Like I said, he's kind of the smaller guy. 6'3", he's only 260, but he's a kind of a longer, lengthier guy. Let's see what they say about him here in the bottom line. Murphy's lacking physical gifts, but he mitigates with a fantastic hand usage and a wisdom of what works as a pass rusher to find the rotational contributing role as an on-ball outside linebacker in the NFL. Love it. I think he fits what they want to do as well. So when it comes to skill set wise and scheme, I think Javonte Jean-Baptiste and Gabriel Murphy are the two guys I'm looking at. Muhammad Kamara is a guy that a lot of people have asked me about as well. So I'll just kind of quick hit him. He's kind of like a Bryce Huff mold, once again, kind of smaller guy as well. Can he, play every down? We'll see. I think so. Super productive in college, though. But kind of like even like Javon Solomon. They're pretty much like the same build. And let's see what else. I'll give you one sleeper tight end because we do need a tight end. Obviously, y'all know I love Ben Sinnott. Man, they have Eric all ranked all the way up to 92. He's got a top 30 visit with Washington as well. I had someone ask me about him yesterday once that came out. Super, talented athletically, but he's injured a lot. Only played 10 games last 2 seasons, had back-to-back seasons with, season-ending injuries. Not ordeal. Tip Ryman's a guy that, had a really good combine, really good numbers. Illinois offense don't really expect much. I think he's a sleeper. Tanner McLaughlin is a guy that popped on tape when you're watching that Arizona offense. Super young, but a lot of talent. But Theo Johnson, in my opinion, will be a home run. It's not just because he played at Penn State. He's a touchdown machine. Super reliable hands, once again. Great red zone threat. Big physical guy. I think Theo fits the mold of what you want out of an NFL tight end. He can block. He can do the gritty stuff. He can, get you those short passes, whether it's like third and short. Like I said, in the red zone when it's crowded, Theo can break through, the physical coverage, but he can also find those zone spots. He can go up and get it. I've seen him make some crazy catches at Penn State. I think Theo would be phenomenal behind Ertz. Like I said, still a Ben Sinnott stan since day one. We've been here. We're standing strong, but he's not a sleeper anymore. My boy done graduated to one of the top tight ends in the draft. And I will end it on, I'm not going to talk about quarterback. I'm sorry, guys. Because there's no point in getting a late round one. But I'll do linebacker because there's a guy that I've been a big fan of as well that I think people are sleeping on. That's Cedric Gray. He had multiple meetings with Washington when I talked to him at the Senior Bowl. I think he's had a couple. We met with him at Pro Day, obviously North Carolina there with Drake May, but Cedric Gray was there as well. I think we did meet with him there at his Pro Day, he said. But in my opinion, he's a leader on the field. He said he's working on, getting stronger in the weight room. Great coverage guy, good run stopper. He can blitz the quarterback. I think Cedric Gray is a guy that people are sleeping on. The North Carolina defense wasn't the best last year. He had a lot of weight on his shoulder. So, and it kind of showed that on tape. He's flying around though. But when it came to big plays, when it came to, getting those third down stops, Cedric Gray was one of those guys, in my opinion, that was in on every single play. I would love him in the later rounds because we still kind of need depth. We don't know what's going to go on with Jamin Davis after next year. And then, of course, Bobby Wagner's obviously like a 1-year veteran. I don't really see him playing 2 years. That's about it, guys. I hope y'all enjoyed the stream and got some good stuff out of it. Like I said, I got to talk about some of my favorite sleepers that aren't getting talked about enough, and I love doing that. I honestly think Elijah Jones is a commander. I think Jalen Polk has a chance of being a commander, and I'd get a jersey. But if you gave me $100 and told me to put it on any prospect to get drafted, it would be Elijah Jones. Absolutely. I think that is Dan Quinn's draft crush if he ever had one. And Chop Robinson too. Chop Robinson, but he's not a sleeper. Chop Robinson is a Dan Quinn guy. Absolutely. And like I said, he's meeting with Washington today. I'm not sure when Elijah Jones's top 30 is. I'll try to reach out to him. Unless he already had it. But like I said, hope y'all enjoyed the stream. I will be back here next Tuesday, same time, to do my final mock draft. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but the last, I want to say 4, maybe it was 5. Going back to Antonio Gibson, I've predicted at least 1 pick in every final mock draft I've done. And I'm not talking about like Chase Young at 2. I'm talking about like beyond the first round. So stay tuned. I'm usually good at 3rd, 4th, 5th round. But the final mock draft is going to be good. Like I said, I'm going to go through scenarios, what I think Washington's thought process is going to be, but then also give you my picks. So come back next week. I'll see y'all same time here on Bleacher Report. Peace.